How does a case go on since 1968?
So the case started out with racist statements made by members of the city council in the 60s. There was a road, the Chrysler Freeway, that was being built at the time. It was in planning phase. And the city council thought that it was a good opportunity to have the federal government run the highway through the African-American neighborhood in the city.
Of Hamtramck?
Right, the one African-American neighborhood. The famous line from the case was that it wasn't urban renewal, it was Negro removal.
Wow. All right, everybody, welcome to another great episode of Cases Gone Wild with me, your host, Jon Marko, brought to you by Marko Law. We have a wonderful guest today, a good friend, a hell of a tenacious attorney. I mean, we've went head-to-head on stuff. A kind of a brilliant savant, I like to think. We have Jim Allen on the show. Thanks for being here, Jim. Good to see you, buddy. Good to be here, man. You have a really good, I was just kind of impressed with your credentials. I've been impressed with you as a human being and as a lawyer, but I didn't know, some of the finer details, two-time U of M, right? You went to University of Michigan for undergrad.
I did.
And law school.
Go Blue.
I couldn't get into U of M for either of those events in my life.
The standards were much lower when I was going through it, John. So.
You grew up in Detroit.
I did.
Back in the day. Your dad was the deputy chief, which was a big position back then in the police department, right?
Yeah, there were only a few of them, and you had to work for a lot of years to get into that spot.
And your dad probably was working a lot, leaving, every day doing crazy stuff, I would imagine.
Yeah, but my dad was present, I was blessed in that respect. My dad was very present in my life, to the day he died.
Yeah, that's great. I always hear good things. I know your brother's David Allen, who's a judge on the Third Circuit Court in Wayne County, who's always spoke very, obviously, finally about your dad. You clerked for Chief Justice Brickley of the Michigan Supreme Court, which we have in common because I clerked for a different Chief Justice. So that's an amazing kind of prestigious thing to do. And then you went and you clerked for Judge Fikens, who was a federal court judge in Detroit. And then you went to a lot of the big firms, Butzel, Pepper Hamilton, and then you worked at General Motors. And then you did your own firm thing, the Allen Brothers.
Yeah.
So
brothers-in-law.
So how many, did you form this with you? So all your brothers are lawyers?
2 out of the 4 brothers are lawyers. One of them, who isn't, the retired police executive, is married to a lawyer. So always a lot of good discussions around the family dinner table at Sunday. So
you have 2 other brothers who are lawyers?
Yes, David and John, both lawyers, both older brothers.
And you guys did a firm together, man. That's family dynamics are always tough, but I can't. Tell us how the Allen Brothers kind of came, because it was a very prominent firm. Very well known.
Yeah, Dave and John were talking for a long time about merging their practices. They were at different places, and I wanted to be part of that. I wanted to work with my brothers. I was young enough at the time where I could take a chance like that.
How old were you at the time?
29.
Yeah,
when we started. Yeah.
So you're still trying to figure out what to do, right? At least I was.
Well, yeah. In trying to figure out actually how the business of law worked was one of the biggest challenges up front. I survived that first year by borrowing $5,000 from my brother Dave and $5,000 from my brother John to get through, and made a little bit of money. And I started out really doing stuff that I never would have thought I would do, working in big law firms. I started out working in the district courts. I took criminal cases, which kind of sharpened me in the courtroom, working in big firms and clerking. you don't get a lot of experience in the courtroom, but I still like to take on cases. I take a few criminal cases every year because that's the only way you're going to try cases anymore.
That's like the trenches, right? Like when you think of the trenches.
Yeah, and you're helping real people. Most people who are going to interact with our criminal justice system are going to interact with it through the district court system, because most of the criminal cases are misdemeanor, not felony cases.
And district court, it's in every city, right? Every city has a district court?
Yeah, I mean, some cities share a district court. You've got Troy, Ferndale, Hazel Park, Madison Heights are one district, but there's 3 locations in that district.
And they do anything from traffic tickets right up to misdemeanors. And then if it gets to a felony level, then it goes to the county court.
Correct.
Right?
But all the cases start in the district court. There's an arraignment that takes place in the district court. There's a preliminary examination that takes place in the district court, probable cause conference type thing. And then if it's bound over, it goes to this trial.
So you start this firm, you're 29, you're working with your brothers. What was that like, working with your brothers day in and day out?
It was fun. I mean, we had challenges, different perspectives on things. Dave didn't like to spend a lot of money on the Diet Coke. He wanted Kirkland's Signature because it was a few bucks cheaper. He would spring for the Diet Coke, but that was reserved specifically for clients. And if he saw me drinking a Diet Coke in the office, of course, I was upbraided appropriately by my older brother for
you got to drink the Kirkland.
Drinking the good stuff.
Yeah. That's hilarious. So so tell us a little bit about your Allen Brothers. You were there for how long?
22 years.
22 years.
Yeah.
And did your brother, Judge David Allen, then leave to go to the bench when you guys were there?
Dave was appointed in 2003, right after we had signed a new lease and a new building.
Oh, no.
Premised upon us sharing it 3 ways. And Dave got appointed. I kind of looked at John. I'm like, what the hell are we going to do now? I can barely afford to pay the rent as it is.
Yeah.
Now we're going to a bigger, fancier spot with 2 of us.
I know, man. It's stressful. Yeah. It keeps you up at night. How are we going to pay the bills,
But John was steady. He's a great manager. Really the heart and soul of our practice. Best lawyer I ever worked with. Brilliant writer. Could, as I said in the run up to this, he could seamlessly switch from trying a complex federal case to the next day going into a boardroom and structuring and papering a multi-million-dollar real estate.
That's hard to do. There's not a lawyers that can shift between transactional and I think I'm like, I'm a trial lawyer. Like, I don't do transactional. I don't know. It would be tough to just switch into, something else.
Yeah. It is, as you said, it's a skill that's learned by very few. I have some of that because of my brother, John. Really, it's been 9 years since we've worked together. John left the firm in 2016 to kind of do his own thing. And, but I still call him, when I get stuck, he's the first person I call.
So tell me about like your first big hit. What was your first big case that helped you keep the lights on? Because everybody has one. I mean, like.
So it was towards the end of my first year in practice with my brothers. I had gotten called by a college roommate early in that first year of practice. And I was familiar with the case. It was his mother's divorce from his father. So it was sort of a very contentious thing. It had been going on. It was the subject of textbooks for family law class in law schools across the country.
They wrote about this case?
They wrote about this case. It's still a very famous case.
And it was in the law school, like, books that the law students read.
While I was in law school, that case was a Hornbook case.
Well, wait a minute. If you were in law school and it was on the case, how did you work on the case?
Divorce, by the time I got it, had been going on for about 25 years because...
How does a divorce go on for 25 years?
It was a huge estate. It was a huge marital estate, and there were assets that were hidden. And
a lot of money.
And it took two bankruptcies, one in New Jersey and one in Nevada that was filed by the husband before the case came to me, and I found some hidden assets.
So these people are getting divorced. Obviously, a lot of money involved, and the case was going on for so long. It went on for 20 plus years.
20 plus years, yeah.
And while you're in law school, you read about the case that was still going on.
And then it came to me almost 6 years after I graduated.
That's insane.
From law school. Yeah.
So how did you even get this case?
It was my law school, or it was my college roommate, my junior year in college roommate, and he subsequently went to law school as well, but he was strictly a IP attorney, so he knew I was out on my own, that I had litigation. Nobody wanted this case because nobody thought they were going to make any money off of it, including me.
Yeah.
I took it on as a favor, more or less.
So did you do a lot of family law stuff?
I have done zero family law work in my career, except to get divorced myself. But this was more about finding assets and navigating the bankruptcy code, which I had some familiarity with.
So who did you represent, the wife or the husband?
The wife.
And
the victim.
The victim, yeah.
Right.
So the husband was hiding assets or whatever, saying, "Oh, I don't have these," or how did that go down?
Yeah, he was hiding assets. And the particular ones I found were bonds that survived bankruptcy. They were bonds that he was a partner with Merv Griffin in one of Merv Griffin's casinos in Atlantic City. And
a lot of cash.
This
casino business, and they make a lot of money too.
Yeah. So, I mean, the assets that I found were worth in excess of $1 million, which at the time in 2000, 2001 was real money.
So you took this case for this lady, and how did you find this money?
Well, they had just found the existence of these bonds, but nobody knew that they had any value. It was up to me to do the research to actually cash those in.
And what is a bond? I mean, I know my grandma used to have saving bonds from the federal government, or war bonds, that would put in the safe, and that I got when I was 18 or whatever.
Right.
But
well, stocks are, individual investors' purchase of equity in the business. A bond is like an asset, or is like you give a company money based upon you're getting a fixed return. And
like a loan.
It's like a loan. Yeah.
Yeah. So he loaned a company money, or what?
That was part of the artifice that he had built in order to avoid giving his wife a equity stake in the casino.
So he was doing all this weird stuff to move money around, and yeah.
Right.
That's crazy. So how did it all end?
Well, it wound up being a negotiation amongst the entire family, because the family had kind of split into factions. There were a couple of brothers who were pro-dad, and then there were a couple of brothers who were pro-mom, and then there was a brother that was sort of in the middle, all of whom were going to be the recipients of whatever came at some point or another anyway. It was just a matter of how they were going to take care of their mother, essentially. And it was a negotiation. Once we uncovered that there was an asset, we had to get the kids on board to pressure the dad to, hey, this is
So you got the money, and then you did a contingency fee.
I had done a contingency fee. I didn't think I was going to get anything, quite frankly. I just kind of lucked my way into it. And I was able to do the research. Having worked at a firm that did a lot of bankruptcy, it was Pepper Hamilton was a very bankruptcy-centric firm.
Yeah, I remember.
I was a commercial litigator for them, but I had, because of the types of cases that they did, I had to have some working familiarity of the bankruptcy
you
code.
never forget in those cases where that nobody expects anything. You know what I mean? Where it's just like a loser. That case has been going on for how long? 20 plus years.
Right.
I had one of the first cases when I worked for Jeffrey Feiger was it was against Pepper Hamilton, and it was an asset thing, right? So he had bought a fractional share in a private jet, right? So they have these fractional shares where you don't actually buy the entire jet. You basically go in and you get lease of the jet, right?
Right.
So and I think he paid this guy, his name was Stuart Koff, okay? He used to be here in Michigan, and he had paid the guy over $100,000, which was a lot of money too back then. I mean, it's a lot of money now, but it was even more money back then. And Stuart took the money and ran. right? He went to like Florida and retired. So Jeffrey sued him, got a judgment against him and the company, like the jet company, in Oakland County Circuit Court, and got a judgment. But that's, as you know, when you're suing like an individual, that's just kind of the beginning sometimes, because he was gone. Then you have to file another action in Florida. We had to hire Florida attorneys and this was all done before I got involved in the case. This was like a 20-year case, right? Or 15-year case. So in Florida, then they file another lawsuit, and the guy says, I don't have any money. I'm poor. You know, he was working for a company.
They always do that, don't they?
Always.
Yeah.
I mean, he had structured it. They're smart how they do this. I mean, it's crazy. He was working at a company where I think he was really like one of the owners, but he had structured it so he was only listed as like something, you know, like a consultant or something. And, I don't have any money. Woe is me. You know, I just live a quiet life in retirement, and please leave me alone. And
sounds like a Hyman Roth type. He's in Miami, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Want to live his life out as quietly, right?
Quiet life, right? So, I don't leave the house and all this stuff. So I remember, like, when I went to work, I'm like, Jeff, I want some cases to work on, like, just on my own, because I wanted to try to learn. You know, I worked on Jeffrey Feiger's, who's a famous lawyer's cases. And they brought up this dude, I'm not kidding. It was like a beaten up, dusty, old box.
We've all seen those boxes. Right?
I mean, I'm coughing. There's dust spraying up in my face when I opened it up.
I just want to know, did you get the money?
Yeah, we got the money.
Okay.
So they're laughing when they deliver this box to me, right? So I start doing research, and you're young and you got time and you're just digging in and you're excited. And I end up finding online, because, you know, I'm doing like super sleuth online, pictures of this guy in Miami
on a yacht
with the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders.
I was going to say with Lefty from Donnie Brasco, but
yeah. He's drinking on his private yacht with these cheerleaders and all this stuff. Now, he had just given a deposition that said he didn't have any money, right? And so I file a motion in Oakland County Circuit Court. Everybody's telling me you can't do it. It won't work. You got to go down to Florida. This case is whatever. I file this. I researched and filed this motion, and I put in pictures of him on a private yacht. I put his deposition testimony next to it. So Judge Langford Morris.
I was going to ask you which judge.
Well, it went through like many iterations because the case was so freaking old. Langford Morris had the case at the time before she left the bench. They ended up hiring Pepple Hamilton, the defendant. And Langford Morris took a look at these pictures and took a look at all this stuff. And she said, Mr. Koff's going to be in my courtroom 1 week from today, or else I'm going to issue a bench warrant and send marshals down to Florida to get him, right? Do it. Within 6 days later, they wrote a check for the full amount plus interest and attorney fees.
How much at that point?
I forget. I think it was like close to $150,000, and on a case that everybody had written off, right? There's never a better feeling than that, right? And then you were the hero. I mean, it was better than me getting like a multi-million-dollar verdict, because it was like this old case. You know what I mean?
Right. It reminds me of the scene in Goodfellas where Henry Hill comes out after getting pinched for the first time. Hey, kid, you popped your cherry. That's right. That's it. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, that was my first big hit, like on my own. You know, so you never forget.
So I got an airplane story.
Yeah.
My oldest client, a guy who I've represented since the very beginning of Allen Brothers. One of the things you got to do when you start a practice is you got to do things that's outside your comfort zone. Like I had never stepped foot in a district court. I didn't know what a probable cause hearing or a preliminary examination was, and I got a story about that too. But my father-in-law introduced me to this guy who had a successful business, and trying to help me out because he knew I was just starting out in practice. And few days after I met him, he calls me up. He says, I want to buy an airplane. You know how to do an airplane deal?
Like a jet or a prop or what?
A jet. $8 million airplane.
Whew.
I said, oh yeah, sure. I know how to do it. I figured I could figure it out. you know? And this is in the early days of the internet. So, not, I think probably still dial up.
Yeah.
Not as easy going on to Google and
you'd have to go try to read periodicals and law books on the wall, man.
I went to the UAD Law Library and I figured it out, and this guy's been a client of mine ever since. So lesson is sometimes you got to take things. We have a oath as lawyers to practice in areas that we're competent to practice in.
Yeah.
But there's always a tension between that and making a living
and learning and getting better. I mean, plus we all start incompetent.
Right.
I mean, essentially, I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I first started. Yeah. But that's crazy. But you have to sometimes push yourself and sometimes go like we had a hearing the other day and a witness who we didn't anticipate was going to be called. We found out the morning of the evidentiary hearing. And so I turned to one of my lawyers, my younger lawyers on the case, and I said, why don't you do the exam of this person? And they're like, oh, no, I can't do that. I'm not prepared. I'm not ready. What are they going to do? What are they going to say? I'm like, dude, sometimes you just got to do it.
That's right.
You just got to do it.
Right.
And we don't, you got to, obviously you're not giving the, $50 million case to someone, but you got to start with, you got to start somewhere, right?
You got to test the young ones out to find out if they have one quality. And it's the most important quality for a young lawyer that wants to learn to be a great lawyer. Fearlessness.
Yeah.
If you give me a fearless young lawyer, I can mold them into a great lawyer. I don't care what their academic background is. If they're fearless, that's what counts in a courtroom. Because what we do is, it can be scary at times.
Man. Yeah.
You've got a person's life in your hand. You may not have them on an operating table, but it's the next best thing to that. You have to. Nobody's going to hire you if you're afraid to advocate for them.
Yeah, right. You can't be timid. And I think these kids, as I like to call them nowadays, are...
you're a kid, man. Come on.
The little kids, the toddlers, are not getting the opportunities that we got because everything's virtual or on Zoom and stuff. And it's a lot different sitting in your basement on your Zoom computer, with your pajamas bottoms on, than it is going into a courtroom and standing up in front of like 50 lawyers like we used to have to do. I mean, do you still get nervous anymore? Like I remember when I used to go to motions like my first years and going to unfamiliar places. Like if I'd have to go up north and it's like a little, I don't know anybody, because familiarity is comfort, right? And my heart used to beat like when I was that doesn't happen to me anymore, man. Not even with juries. It's weird. I get up in front of the jury. I feel anxious that I don't want to lose, but I don't have that heart.
Yeah, well, maybe you're fortunate. Maybe you're
a psycho.
But me, I still get butterflies every time I sign.
Really?
Yep.
Yeah. It's.
I mean, you don't manifest it, physically, but you feel it inside you because again, what you're doing is very important, especially the people who to the people that you're responsible for representing. So it's. I used to literally feel like the heart. Right.
You could feel it beating in your chest. I don't get that anymore, man. Sometimes I wish I had a little bit of it, but I'm just a psycho now. So tell me about some of all your cases that you told me about when we prepared for the show involve like long ass cases. You are the king of long cases. You told me, is this true? Somebody told me that you just finished a case that started in 1968 before I was born.
Before I was born. So yeah.
How is this? How are you getting all these old cases?
So I was appointed as a city attorney in Hamtramck in 2005.
Hamtramck, for our listeners out of state, tell them about Hamtramck.
Hamtramck is an absolutely fascinating city.
Yeah.
It has been a way station for immigrants to this country for over 100 years.
And it's inside Detroit, right? Yep. It's fully contained.
It's fully encircled, well, on one side, on the west side, by a portion of it by Highland Park. So Highland Park and Hamtramck together are complete. They're two enclaves.
Inside Detroit proper, right?
Yes, inside Detroit proper, sovereign from the city of Detroit with their own city governments.
How does that even happen? How did that even happen?
It's a quirk of history. Actually, Hamtramck in its founding was larger than Detroit.
No way.
It was Hamtramck Farms, and Hamtramck people think is Polish because it sounds kind of Polish.
Yeah, and
but
it had a big Polish community.
It did have a Polish community, still does to a certain degree, but Hamtramck was actually a Frenchman.
No way.
A colonel during revolutionary times, I believe.
And Detroit was French too. Just for our listeners, Detroit, and then we
Right.
have all these French streets around here,
Yeah, Montcalm.
Gratiot and
Gratiot.
Yeah, Gratiot. Yeah.
But Hamtramck extended all the way down to the Detroit River. There were all these farms that were, very narrow, that stretched from the river to about what is present day 8 Mile.
Dude, that's huge.
Hamtramck was one of those tracks.
So it's like 8 miles of a track?
A farm that big. Yes.
That's crazy.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So what, they needed access to the water or something?
Yeah, and I think the points, actually, there's part of that history also involves the points, if I'm
Grosse
not mistaken.
Point? Yeah. So, all right, anyways, we digress on the history of Hamtramck.
Yeah, I was brought in as the city attorney in 2005, and there's this case that gets brought out, a class action fair housing lawsuit that, I'm doing my
and what does it mean to be
on.
the city attorney for a city?
It's different in every city, but the archetype is, there's only 7 communities in Metro Detroit, I think, that have in-house city attorneys. The rest,
in other words, they work directly and are paid by the city.
Right. As city employees, you've got Livonia, Dearborn, Warren, Detroit, obviously, Troy, maybe a few others. But
did you work directly for the city, or did they hire the Allen brothers?
They hired the Allen Brothers law firm.
All right, so you have your own law firm. The city hires you to be the city attorney, and then as a city attorney, you're responsible for like all their legal stuff?
I mean, it was a pretty big job, actually, and we did this in several communities. But you do the prosecutions. That's the misdemeanors in the district court. Well, I had that background already because I had been doing that work.
Yeah.
Although I didn't really do a lot of the work in the district court because I had other people in the firm that did it.
Yeah.
Well, actually, for the longest time, it was my partner, David Jones, who's
great guy.
Had
a case against him, police case.
Great lawyer. You know, like next to my brother John and my partners now, just outstanding lawyer, outstanding human being. So David did a lot of that. But you manage the city council. You make sure that they run their meetings according to Robert's rules and the charter. You're basically the attorney general for the city. You have to make sure that the city is abiding by its charter. That's your primary obligation.
Hamtramck, at least nowadays, that I could imagine is quite challenging, but that's that's for a separate show.
Yeah, that's for a separate show.
That's for a separate show. So tell me about this case. You get this case. Was it like my jet case? Did they bring up like a dusty box and heap it in your
more or less? But they didn't even have the dusty. They didn't even have the dusty box because there had been so many people before me. That
how does a case go on since 1968?
So the case started out with racist statements made by members of the city council in the 60s. There was a road, the Chrysler Freeway, that was being built at the time. It was in planning phase. And the city council thought that it was a good opportunity to have the federal government run the highway through the African-American neighborhood in the city. Of
Hamtramck?
Right, the one African-American neighborhood. And they were very obvious about it. They were very upfront about it.
So they said, the Hamtramck City Council's like, you're going to place this highway, put it right through the black community.
Right, which displaced all of the, not all, but a large majority of the African-American residents of that city. Judge Keith.
What, the city was going to take it like eminent domain and then just like take their houses and build the highway, or what?
Correct. I mean, well, the city wasn't building the highway, but the city was involved in site selection. So the city guided.
Told the federal government, here's where I think you should put it, right through the
Right.
black people's neighborhood.
Right.
Yeah.
And Judge Damon J. Keith, a civil rights
Famous
icon,
judge.
right?
Famous, God rest in peace, but famous civil rights judge.
He was a district court judge at the time the case started.
In federal court?
In federal court. He tried the case in, I believe, 1971.
They had a jury trial?
I believe it was a bench trial.
Or bench trial? So they sued. Who was suing?
It was a class
of people
that were African American who had been displaced from their homes. That's basically the class. There were.
Did they build the highway?
They built the highway. They effectively evicted all of the African American population from the city.
So they couldn't stop the highway from being built. They sued for what? Money damages or something?
Yes. When you're removed from your home due to a project of actually, Judge Keith ruled that it was not a project of urban renewal. The famous line from the case was that it wasn't urban renewal, it was Negro removal.
Wow.
And
that's a pretty strong words. Damien, that's pretty strong.
Right. But that obviously gave them the right to damages. What the court decided was for remedial damages to be issued. So
what does that mean?
It meant, as a practical matter, that the city had to build 200 units of remedial housing, scattered both scattered throughout the city and located in one designated neighborhood, the Grand
in Hamtramck,
right, and a senior tower that gave preference to members of the class that were displaced. So the
judge said, "You guys were wrong. This was illegal, and now you have to make up for it, essentially.
Right.
Build housing for these people."
Right. So what transpired afterwards was basically 2 decades worth of evasion on the part of the city. My client, right, trying to frustrate the court's
for 20
ruling.
years. What would they do? What are these people doing, by the way, for 20 years? They don't have a house.
Right, most of them were scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. Now, when we finally did get around 30 years later to building the remedial housing.
These people are dead and stuff. That's crazy.
The class membership actually was passed down 2 generations, where, at the end of the case, we were placing grandchildren of the original victims in remedial units of housing.
That's crazy. And you know what? That's also a shame, because those people in their lifetime never got justice. I mean, their grandchildren did. I mean, but that's pretty sad. So you get the case, and what's going on with the case at the time?
I looked, so we had to build 200 units of remedial housing. I'm looking at the city. I'm thinking, we're a city of people of color. Why would we not want to build 200 units of remedial housing for people who look like us anyway?
Yeah.
Look like the people in the city anyway. So why not do this? This is a good thing. I'm sure I'm skipping a lot of the story from 1971 to 2005. I mean, I can tell you lots of appeals. The flashpoint was in 1989 when the Poletown plant was being built. There was an injunction in place that prohibited the city from using any city-owned property for any purpose. So that effectively prohibited the city from doing this GM development. And in order to,
as a punishment for not complying,
in order to get the permission to use their city-owned property to, in part, build the GM Poletown plant, they had to finally agree that they were going to do the infrastructure and everything else like that. So they did infrastructure.
But they had already been told they needed to do. People are going to be listening to this and be like, Jim, how can somebody get away with this for so many decades?
Judge Keith was a giant in the civil rights movement prior to becoming a federal judge, and he subsequently was elevated to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. But he was able to keep this case by special designation.
Even when he went to Court of Appeals? Wow.
Yeah, but
I didn't know you could do that.
He was a very gentle man. I don't think that he wanted to throw Mayor Kozarin into jail for contempt. So he tried to prod things along as best he could. But by the time I had come along in 2000,
I think some judges would say, okay,
that wasn't Judge Keith's way. And there were some things that were being done. They did build the senior plaza. They built infrastructure in the Grand Haven Dyer neighborhood, but no houses. So I came in and I got to the left of my opposing counsel. So the first hearing I went to with Judge Keith, I said, what happened here is a historic wrong. It's got to be corrected.
Good for you.
And we need to get organized about how we go about doing this. Fortunately, I had extensive interaction with my opposing counsel while I was clerking for Judge Fikens. He was class action counsel in the Haydix and Glover cases, which were prisoner class action cases, also decades long, where Judge Fikens had the state of Michigan women's and men's prison systems under federal jurisdiction. So the lawyer that had that case was my opposing counsel in this other civil rights class action.
Now, did you get heat from the city who's your client?
Actually, no, because I went to by the time I became city attorney, the city officials were all progressive. They weren't they saw the folly of, we were able to build Pole Town, but we've got 800 city lots that we're spending $2 million a year to insure and maintain.
Wow.
We need to get out from underneath this case. And, Judge Keith was consistent in one thing. The case was never going to be dismissed until the 200 units of remedial housing were built. So long story short, in the period of time from 2005 to 2013, which was an interregnum, 2013, the state of Michigan came in and they eliminated all the local officials, including the city attorney. So in 2013, I was out for 5 years. I was out as the city attorney. I came back subsequently, which is another story. But when I left in 2013, we had built 197 units of remedial housing. The state of Michigan had one job. They had to build 3 units of remedial housing. And instead, they went in and reassessed all of the 197 units of remedial housing that we had built and increased their taxes, which violated covenants that we had made with the federal government and state government in getting the funds to build those houses.
What's wrong with them?
The state of Michigan is a disaster. The laws are still on the books that allow for emergency financial management for cities. People give the state of Michigan some credit for the turnaround that Detroit's had and
with Kevin Orr, remember that?
In the bankruptcy. Yeah. Everywhere else, it's been problematic. I mean, the state of Michigan has never done anything while it's managed the city as financial manager to fix any of the structural problems.
Why couldn't they build 3 houses? That was it? That was what needed to be done?
Yeah, that was it. That was it. I mean, you'll have to ask Governor Snyder's emergency financial manager why
that's crazy
why they
to me.
Decided to try to squeeze a few extra shekels out of the poor people that we had put in those houses. Rather than build the remedial housing.
It sounds like just travesty piled upon travesty.
And then in 2018, when I came back, we had to unscramble 3 years of property taxes. And thank God.
They kept raising that. So they put these poor displaced people and their grandchildren in these houses that the court ordered built. And then the city manager came in and from the state of Michigan and said, let's tax them. Let's tax them.
Right.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it was really bad. And it took me, well, actually, another lawyer in my firm who deserves a lot of the credit for this, Harry Kalagerakis, who now works as the deputy register of deeds in Wayne County. But Harry was instrumental in unscrambling 3 years of property taxes. It's hard under state law to undo assessments, and once they go into foreclosure, it's darn near impossible. Yeah. Fortunately, the officials in the county government were a heck of a lot more helpful than those
Wayne
in
County
state government. Yeah. The county treasurer, Eric Sabri, was a true hero in this unscrambling.
Did they
of
ever
those
build
eggs.
the rest of the houses?
Yeah. So once we unscrambled the property tax issue, we were able to get grant funding, ARPA funds, and NSP2 funds to build the remaining 3 units of housing, which we completed in December 23, January 24, and we closed out the case in June of 2024. So it took 56 years.
That's insane.
To finish that case.
I mean, that's truly justice. There's a saying, justice delayed is justice denied. I mean, that's a sad story. I'm glad that it has a kind of happy ending. I mean, are people living in these houses right now? I mean,
yes. So the happy ending is that some of the descendants of the original class members are now living in their units of remedial housing.
This has got to be one of the longest cases ever.
A lot of the federal consent decree cases do get extended. I think I mentioned Haydix and Glover. Those cases lasted probably 25, 30 years. Judge Fikens also had the consent decree where the federal courts ran the Detroit Water and Sewer Department. That case lasted many decades, probably 30 years. So
why does it take so long?
Well, in general, not in the fair housing case that I just talked about, the Garrett case. In general, the federal courts are monitoring governmental entities' compliance with the orders that the court enters to remediate the situation. So the court is really monitoring for all those years.
Make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, and they will have periodic status conferences where violations of the consent decree are raised. If they're serious enough, there'll be motion practice around it.
Now, does people get really you see on TV or you read about how often does somebody really get thrown in jail? Because you can say, "Oh, judge, we're working on it. We're working on it." I mean, they did that for over 40 years or 50 years or whatever in that case. So,
my experience is very few people actually.
Have you ever seen it happen?
Where somebody's been jailed for contempt?
Yeah, remember that bridge guy? What was that guy's
name?
Maroon? Manny Maroon. I think he violated so many orders. Finally, Prentice Edwards put him in jail. But then he appealed it, and the Court of Appeals let him out, I think.
Right. Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, that was kind of a famous instance where, a judge really got their dander up over non-compliance with their orders. It doesn't happen very often.
I feel like if I was a judge after after a year, I'm like, all right, you're going to jail. Right. And then they fix it pretty quick.
Well, part of the delay, although inexcusable as it was, the city didn't have the resources and quite frankly, didn't have the know-how that Allen Brothers brought to the table. We built those 200 units of housing without spending a dime of general fund money.
Everything, grants and stuff?
Everything was grants. And, I'm practicing now with one of the lawyers who at the time was at Wayne County, Jill Ferrari, outstanding real estate and development lawyer. The management of those grant funds was really the way that we were able to get the housing built. The city never had the money to, if the city had to rely upon the funds, its own funds, they wouldn't have police, they wouldn't have fire, they wouldn't have garbage pickup.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. Well, you've been involved in a lot of other long cases too. You're I never knew before today that you're like the long. What was that story, that Charles Dickens novel? Remember? They talk about that case. They're like, no one remembers how it started.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. But it's been going on for generations. So what is so I heard that you did a driving while license suspended trial that went on for days.
Yeah.
How does that?
A 3-day DWLS case. That case involved a young African-American police officer who was brutally beaten by state troopers on his way back from East Lansing, visiting a college friend of his.
Horrible. He worked for who?
He worked for Detroit Police Department. That was actually a referral from my brother Dave. He had represented some Detroit police officers who were wrongly accused of crimes, and really did an outstanding job for him. Dave, although he didn't practice as long as Jon, he's younger than Jon, older than me, also a great lawyer.
Yeah. He's a great judge too.
Yeah. I think the two things are related. The best judges typically are the ones that have labored in the vineyards that we've been doing
That's
for a long time.
That's a good way to put it. That's a good way to put it.
So Dave actually, didn't have a lot of time in the bar, but he was still had seen a lot and done a lot, and was a talented lawyer in his own right. Graduated first in his law school class, and had a good heart for the practice as well. But he did a great job for these officers, and one of them called David to say that they had a friend that was in trouble.
So how does this guy who's a cop in Detroit get his ass beat by other cops?
Well, they didn't know he was a cop, so they pull him off the back of his bike, kick him in the head, and
where did this happen?
On 96 in Howell, Michigan. Ironically enough, the home of the Klan in Michigan.
That's the home for our listeners that aren't local. Howell is the birthplace of the Ku Klux Klan, right?
Well, it's
the headquarters.
It's the headquarters in Michigan. Right?
Headquarters in Michigan. I think it was the national headquarters, which was always weird to me that Michigan had a city that hosted the KKK,
right?
Which is because we have a strong history of civil rights and we have a large minority populations from African Americans to Arabs. But anyways, we digress. So what happened? So
the criminal case is resolved before I get involved. The fleeing and eluding, they charged him with fleeing and eluding to cover up the beating.
That's horrible.
And he wound up taking a plea to a lesser misdemeanor charge that was going to result in the suspension of his driver's license.
Because he didn't want to probably lose his job.
Because he didn't want to lose his job. Because if he was convicted in Howell, the home of the Klan, of fleeing and eluding, that would be a felony conviction and his career would be over. He was 25 years old. And really had a bright future prior to
That's
horrible.
Prior to
this happening.
I can't imagine.
So at the time, there was a chief of police who was a really good man. We lost him during COVID, Benny Napoleon.
Oh, yeah.
So Benny knew that this young officer hadn't done anything wrong and was not going to fire him because he had the misdemeanor, but he did not have a valid driver's license. So the one stipulation that he had to stay on the job was he could not drive a patrol car. So one day he's out.
That makes it hard to be a cop.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you're on the horse police or something.
He was in the jump seat, but one day he made a drug bust. The car gets impounded. The bustee, the subject, happened to be dating one of his fellow officers in the precinct.
The guy who got busted?
The guy who got busted. So,
is dating a cop?
Is dating a cop.
Oh, wow. Okay.
A crooked cop who eventually was kicked out of the police department for corruption years later.
Yeah. This is crazy.
So my client sees her going back into the cell block to talk to her boyfriend. The guard of the cell block reports back the terms of the conversation, and he then sees this woman go out into where the car is at and is rummaging around before the evidence techs get there. So he goes to the guard and says, what was the conversation? He says, well, I think her boyfriend was telling her where the drugs were hidden in the car. He reports his fellow officer to his shift sergeant, the supervisor, and she goes out on leave for a week, claiming she's sick because she knows she's going to get disciplined for this.
Yeah.
And she comes back, and the first thing she does is file a misdemeanor complaint saying that she saw my client drive
a vehicle,
a police car.
When he had no license.
When he had no license.
No way.
So he gets charged with DWLS. So this
Why did they charge this guy? Just the prosecutor
Yeah, I mean the prosecutor who will remain nameless.
Was a doofus?
No, I mean he was actually, but he was he had a hardline position, and a hardline position on police accused of any wrongdoing.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I tried the case in front of a judge retired police officer who became a judge. Mother Marion Moore was what we called her. She was well into dementia by the time this case came out. But she had not tried a case in the busiest trial court in the state of Michigan for 8 years prior to this
How'd
case.
she get away with that?
She just would adjourn things. She would do whatever it took to. And she would, the adjourning of cases, consistently will sometimes just lead people to throw up their hands and take a plea.
Yeah. Or settle the case.
Or settle the case.
But and just so our listeners know, I mean, a driving while license suspended case is normally a trial would be 30 minutes long. I mean,
not even
10
that.
minutes.
Well, I mean, there's rarely a trial because there's no question that the driver is in the driver's seat.
Right.
And
either
he
had a license or not.
And no question that their license is suspended. But this was the one instance where the alleged driver was saying, I didn't drive this car. What are you talking about?
So it was a setup.
Yeah. Long story short, we win the trial.
So 3 days?
Yeah.
What did you do for 3 days? How can you?
I had to lay a foundation for all of the intrigue behind the charge. Luckily Marion Moore was asleep and I got to get a lot of stuff into evidence that I normally wouldn't.
So this was a jury?
It was a jury trial.
And so the judge is
sleeping. Which is unheard of.
So you're just doing a jury trial in where? Detroit? 36th district? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Downtown Detroit, right. Busiest court one of the busiest.
Which is now a client. Believe it or not, courts get sued. And when 36 gets sued, I sometimes will represent the court.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, I love the court because that's, again, where a lot of my learning took place.
Yeah. This is
where
crazy.
A lot of the most colorful people in the Detroit legal market have find themselves on a daily basis.
So 3 days over this guy, whether he was driving or not. And so you have to put in all the backstory of, look, she was dating this drug bust and the relationship, and they wanted to get this guy.
Right. And you're only getting, in a day in 36 district court is about 3.5 hours.
Okay.
So it was 10 hours of testimony, but we got an acquittal, not surprisingly. And so the case actually takes another turn. So
your guy's not guilty.
By the time the case goes to trial and is completed, Benny Napoleon is no longer the chief of police. It's a new guy from out of state, from Virginia, who was a real hard ass. His name was Jerry Oliver.
I don't remember Jerry.
One of the least liked police chiefs in the history of the department.
I don't remember him.
He wound up. Ironically enough, he wound up getting fired from the police department because he tried to take a firearm through airport security and was charged with a crime over that. But in any event,
so this new police chief
comes in and he's like, I ain't bringing him back. I'm like, he's acquitted. He's like, I'm not bringing him back. So
but your guy had to go through this. This is this poor cop out there. He gets beaten up in Howell, abused, has to take a police so he doesn't lose his job. Gets charged with a driving while license suspended, has to hire you.
And so by training, I was a labor and employment lawyer. So, I mean, that was for the first 5 years. I did a lot of that work, either as a law clerk, writing those opinions, or at GM, I was in the labor department, and Butzel, best labor firm in the state. Pepper Hamilton.
I beat them a lot.
They're good. Okay. They're a good firm.
They are a good firm.
I've got them on the other side of where I'm plaintiff's counsel of employment case right now.
They're good, but nobody's
good
as good
firm.
as...
They're an ethical firm. They fight hard, but they fight clean. But in any event, I couldn't get them back to work, so I had to sue the city of Detroit.
No way.
Yeah. Fortunately, my case was assigned to my mentor and dear friend, Kay Terzag.
Oh yeah.
So Kay retired in the middle of the case. And he had just given the city of Detroit a tremendous ruling in the Gary Brown case, the case that Kwame Kilpatrick, who was the mayor at the time, was most concerned about. So they thought they had a great judge because he had issued this decision. Well, I convinced, some might say conned, the lawyer on the other side to keep Judge Terzag on the case to arbitrate the case.
So he retires, he leaves the bench, and then you guys can agree to say, look, let's go hire. You hire him essentially,
you hire him
right?
as private
well, he's a
attorney.
private lawyer now, right?
Right.
Retired judge, and you hire him to still be the judge, like in private arbitration.
Right. So,
that's a great idea.
So he winds up awarding, not only entering an order bringing him back to work, but awards him $350,000 in damages.
Good
right?
for him.
So this young cop who's at this, I met him when he was 24. This is probably 3 years later. He goes, well, what do I do with this money? I said, well, I got a family, and making a mortgage payment can be a pain in the ass. Take the money, buy a house. Don't have a mortgage payment. He takes the money, he buys the house. He buys a house in Brownstown Township on the same street as Judge Terzak. Next door to him is an avowed, nasty, terrible racist.
No.
Yes.
This guy can't catch a break,
He can't catch
man.
a break. This neighbor next door tortured him. Everything from, flaming dog shit on the porch to loud music at night to, throwing stuff on his lawn. I mean, just nasty stuff.
That's horrible.
Yeah. So eventually it leads to a altercation. Who gets charged? My client, right?
No, not again.
Right.
Not again,
right.
dude. Dude, his client keeps
Right.
on giving you work.
Well, he was a good guy. I mean, it wasn't his fault. And
Yeah.
and at some point he became more of a
friend.
like a little brother and
Yeah,
a friend.
yeah.
I mean, I wanted to see him succeed, and thank God, he wound up, show how old I am. He actually wound up retiring from the police department, I think last year. But
so he's now being charged with what?
An assault.
Yeah. So
And
what happened with that case?
got it kicked down in Brownstown, and the long story short, the racist neighbor, his wife finally got wise, left him for one of my client's friends.
The ultimate revenge.
The ultimate revenge.
Oh man, so there is a good ending,
There's a good ending, yeah. And the guy had a great career, and little things like that you do for people are really what makes this job worth doing.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely changed that guy's life and made a difference, and you never know where things are going to go too, like sometimes I do little things or favors or not favors or just help people, and then you never know how it's going to affect your life too later on. I mean, the connections that you make, or the people, or somebody calls you on a big case or something, you just never know. Right.
Well, I mean, and some of us are, you too. I mean, we're looking past this life too for our eternal rewards, and you don't want to go before your maker when it's all over with, and tell them that you've turned your back on people in need.
Yeah.
So
we got it. We got a lot of good work to do.
Right.
We still well, it's been good to have you on the show, man.
Great being here, John. Always a pleasure.
Really good to see you, and keep up the good works. And I will too. Those are great stories. So I know we even got more, but I'm being told.
Well, next time we'll bring the comic relief. I'll bring Deldon and Brian Summerfield, and
all right, we'll have a trio.
We'll do a group podcast.
All right, that sounds like a deal. Well, thanks again. So thanks, Jim Allen, for being on the show. What a great guy with great stories. Wow, I can't believe some of that stuff. Thank you for listening. Please share our show with your friends. Remember, you can watch us on our YouTube channel. We cleaned it up. All our videos are uploaded. We record live. If you or someone needs help, you have any type of dispute, neighbors are throwing flaming poo at you, whatever it is, or more serious, you know where you can reach us. You can give us a call on our new number, 313-777-7777. That's all sevens, 313 all sevens, or go online at markolaw.com. That's markolaw.com. We'll get you hooked up with Jim Allen or whoever else you need to help you. We'll see you in another 2 weeks here on another great episode of Cases Gone Wild.